The girl in the neon mist. The twin moons of Velarath hung low and violet in the sky when Captain Davin Rail first saw her. He had been wandering the merchant quarter of Solen City for 3 hours, doing what every off-world visitor did on their first night, staring up at the towering bioluminescent spires, watching creatures he had no names for haggle over goods he couldn't identify. His mission was simple: retrieve a navigational module from a black market dealer, return to his ship, and be gone before sunrise. Simple. Clean. No complications. Then she stepped out of a vapor cloud. She was humanoid, perhaps that was what stopped his breath first. Tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like oil on dark water, shifting between deep indigo and midnight silver with each movement. Her eyes were amber, split by vertical pupils, and they found him immediately through the crowd as though she had been searching for him specifically. A slow smile spread across her lips, lips the color of crushed amethyst. She wore almost nothing, a wrap of iridescent fabric around her torso and thighs, and coils of glowing copper wire around her wrists and ankles that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her dark hair floated around her shoulders as if gravity had lost its argument with her. She tilted her head. Looked him up and down the way someone appraises an art piece they're not sure they want to buy. Then she crooked one finger at him, slow, deliberate, and turned away into the crowd. Davin didn't move. He was a practical man. A seasoned man. He had been through 3 wars, 2 divorces, and one very bad night on Carrot Station that he still didn't discuss. He knew better than to follow a beautiful stranger into an alien city at night. She glanced back over her shoulder. He followed. The streets of Solen City moved like a living organism, crowded, pulsing, loud with 100 languages and the bass drone of engines beneath the streets. She moved through it effortlessly, glancing back every dozen steps to make sure he was still there, as if this were a game she had choreographed in advance. Davin kept pace, his hand near the sidearm he wasn't supposed to be carrying, his eyes darting between her and the shadows around them. She led him through a spice market where smoke burned his eyes blue, past a row of vendors selling creatures suspended in jars of glowing liquid, through an archway etched with symbols he didn't recognize. The farther they went from the main boulevard, the quieter it became, just the soft hum of the city's veins beneath their feet and the clicking of her ankle coils. Then she stopped in front of a low doorway wrapped in hanging beads of polished bone, turned to face him fully, and leaned against the frame. The amber of her eyes caught the nearest light strip and blazed. "You followed." Her voice was low, layered, like 2 people speaking in near-perfect unison. "You wanted me to," Davin said. Her smile sharpened. "Smart, for an off-worlder." She reached out and touched his jaw with 2 fingers, barely a graze, and something electric moved through his skin that had nothing to do with any weapon. "My name is Illy." "And yours?" "Davin." "Davin." She said it slowly, tasting it. "You should go back to your ship, Davin. You crooked your finger at me. And now I'm uncroaking it." But her eyes said something else entirely. They burned with something urgent beneath the playfulness, something she was working very hard to keep from the surface. Before he could speak again, she ducked through the bead curtain and was gone. Davin stood in the alley for exactly 4 seconds. Then he pushed through the curtain after her. The room beyond was empty. The chase through Solen City. She had vanished the way smoke vanishes, completely, instantly, leaving only a faint trace of something sweet in the air that Davin had no word for. He searched the room, a narrow chamber with 2 exits, and chose the one that had been disturbed recently, a sliding panel cracked open at the base. Beyond it was a service corridor, then a vertical shaft, then the open belly of the city's lower level, a world beneath the world, lit entirely by bioluminescent tubing and the glow of machinery. He caught a glimpse of her 20 meters ahead, slipping between 2 enormous grinding gears that powered some engine he couldn't name. She moved like water. He moved like a man who had spent too long on starships. But he was fast when he needed to be. She led him on a winding chase through districts that grew stranger with every turn, a corridor where the gravity shifted sideways without warning and he had to run along what had been a wall, a market where the vendors were enormous insects that chittered at him as he passed, a bridge of living vines strung between 2 towers that swayed under his weight while she danced across it ahead of him, glancing back with that infuriating smile. At one point she stopped at a junction, and he nearly closed the distance. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something crossed her face that wasn't playfulness. Something like conflict. Like she was deciding something. Then a crowd of revelers surged between them, beings in elaborate bioluminescent masks celebrating some festival he didn't understand, and by the time he'd pushed through them she was gone again. He followed her scent, that strange, sweet trace she left in the air, through a district of sleeping workers and into a warehouse district where the buildings breathed with the slow rhythm of stored organic goods. Here the air was thick and warm, and the sounds of the city fell to a low murmur. He was breathing hard now. His shirt was soaked. But the fire in his chest wasn't entirely from exertion, and he was honest enough with himself to admit it. He had left a life behind to fly among the stars. Left a marriage that had gone cold somewhere between the third deployment and the fourth. Left a planet that had stopped feeling like home. He had told himself for 2 years that he wanted nothing, no attachment, no complications, no one who could make him feel the particular vulnerability of caring. And then a shimmer-skinned woman with vertical pupils and a slow smile had crooked her finger at him and his chest had done something embarrassing. He found her prints in a patch of soft-growth medium that had spilled from a broken container, small, bare feet, moving fast. He followed them to a heavy door, pushed through it, and emerged into a courtyard open to the violet sky. She was standing in the center of it, facing away from him, very still. "You're faster than I expected," she said without turning. "You left me breadcrumbs," he said. "Consciously or not." She turned then, and he saw that the playfulness had fully drained from her face. What remained was something rawer. Her eyes were wide, her jaw set, and she was clutching something to her chest with both hands, an object he hadn't noticed before, roughly the size of a small book, wrapped in dark cloth. Her knuckles where they gripped it had gone pale silver. "You need to stop following me," she said. "And you need to stop running." He kept his voice level. "What are you carrying, Illy?" Her chin lifted. "Nothing that concerns you." "Then let me see it." She bolted. He went after her. Corners and confessions. The abandoned garden had no name on any map of Solen City, or if it did, Davin's translator couldn't find it. It had clearly been cultivated once. Wide paths of polished stone wound between raised beds of alien vegetation that had since been left to grow as it pleased, climbing the broken walls and spilling over crumbled archways. Some of the plants glowed softly, pale green, pale gold, and their pollen drifted in the air like slow sparks. The twin moons were directly overhead now, and in their combined light everything was rendered in lilac and shadow. It was the most beautiful place Davin had seen on any world. He had cornered her at the far wall, not by outrunning her, but by anticipating her. She was good, but the garden had only 2 exits, and he'd been trained to see them before he entered. She stood with her back to the old stone, chest heaving, the wrapped object still clutched against her ribs, watching him approach with eyes that burned. "Don't," she said. He stopped 3 meters away. Held up both hands, empty. "I'm not taking anything from you," he said. "I just want to understand what's happening." "Why?" Her voice cracked slightly on the word. "You're an off-worlder. You have a ship. You have somewhere else to be. Whatever this is," she gestured between them with one hand, briefly freeing it from the object, "it isn't real." "I made sure of that." Something landed cold in his gut. "What do you mean, you made sure?" She pressed her lips together. Looked away. Then, slowly, the way someone sets down a weapon they've been carrying too long, she lowered herself onto a low stone wall and sat. The fight went out of her posture all at once. "My people have certain abilities," she said quietly. "I can emit a chemical signal. It affects beings with certain neurochemistry. Makes them feel drawn. Curious. Warm toward you." She met his eyes. "I used it on you, in the market. I needed someone to follow me, someone off-world, someone without ties to the city factions, and you were there, and you looked." She stopped. "I looked what?" A long pause. "Trustworthy," she said. "Which is irrational. You're a stranger." Davin sat down on the wall opposite her. The pollen drifted between them like slow fire. So everything I felt following you was manufactured, he said. He meant it to sound neutral. It didn't entirely. The initial pull, yes. She looked at the object in her hands. What came after, I can't account for. The signal doesn't sustain. It fades after the first few minutes. She looked up. You kept following. He had nothing to say to that, so he said nothing. She unwrapped the object slowly, as if unwrapping something sacred. What emerged was a disk of material he couldn't name, smooth, dark, warm-looking, with a surface that shifted like the skin of a living thing, patterns moving through it in slow currents. It pulsed faintly in her hands, and even from 3 meters away, Davin felt something, a low resonance in his sternum, like a bell struck in an adjacent room. This is the Veil Pulse, she said. It's been in my family for 11 generations. It stores the memory of our people, not just history, but the actual living memory of who we were, encoded in its structure. What we ate, what we dreamed, what our children's voices sounded like. Her jaw tightened. The Karath Syndicate has been buying artifacts from Solen City's lower families. Legally, technically. Through debts and false contracts. They've already taken 12 cultural objects from the lower districts. She stroked the disk's surface once with her thumb, and the patterns responded, quickening. They sent a collector for this 3 days ago. I've been running since. Why did you need me? Davin asked. Why not go to whoever handles this kind of thing here? Because the Karath Syndicate owns whoever handles this kind of thing here. She looked at him steadily. An off-world ship isn't under their jurisdiction. If the pulse leaves the planet aboard a vessel with no local ties, they can't follow it without triggering an interplanetary incident. I needed a pilot. A beat. I needed someone I could trust. So I went looking. And I found, she hesitated. A mark, he said. I found you, she said, and there was something in the way she said it that was very different from anything preceding it. The weight of staying. They stayed in the garden for an hour before they moved. It wasn't strategic. It was just that neither of them stood up, and the night held around them, and the pollen kept drifting, and at some point Illy moved to sit beside him on the wall rather than across from it, and Davin did not put distance between them. She told him about her family, her mother, who had been the pulse's keeper before her, and who had died 2 cycles ago, Velaratha's equivalent of 2 years, leaving Illy both the artifact and the target that came with it. She told him about the lower districts, the slow economic strangulation that the off-world syndicates had been performing for a generation, acquiring cultural patrimony as debt settlement, stripping identity the way you'd strip a ship for parts. He told her about himself. More than he'd meant to, more than he usually told anyone. He told her about the marriage that had gone cold, about the years of distance he'd built carefully around himself like a second hull, about the way he'd convinced himself that solitude was preference rather than damage. You're very honest, she said. The moons had moved. In their shifted light, her skin ran more silver than indigo, and the copper coils at her wrists pulsed warm gold. You used a chemical on me to make me follow you, he said. Honesty seems like the appropriate response. She laughed, a genuine one, surprised out of her, and it changed her face entirely. Made her look younger. Made something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with any signal. The pulse, she said, looking down at the disk where it rested between them on the wall. It can be read. If someone with the right technology interfaces with it, they can extract every encoding within it. If the Karath Syndicate acquires it, she paused, not only will my people lose what it holds, but the information within it could be used to forge cultural authentication documents. They could claim ownership of sites, traditions, bloodlines. They've done it on other worlds. And you thought you could run forever? I thought I could run long enough to find another way. She met his eyes. I haven't found one yet. He studied the disk. Felt that low resonance again, not the chemical pull she'd described but something quieter, realer. The sense of something significant, the way you felt standing at the edge of an overlook and understanding, suddenly, how large the world was. My ship can get to the Meridian Archive on Casseth Station in 6 days, he said. The archive has independent jurisdictional status. No syndicate can compel retrieval of anything deposited there. She was very still. I don't have anything to pay you with, she said carefully. I'm aware. The Karath Syndicate will have people watching the docking bays. Getting aboard your ship without being seen is something I've done before. He stood, picking up the wrapped disc and holding it out to her. Though usually for less interesting reasons. She stood too, taking the pulse from him, and her fingers closed over his hand for a moment where they met, warm and deliberate, and the current that moved through that contact was nothing she had manufactured. He was certain of that now. Why? She asked quietly. You could take this. You said yourself, it could be sold for. I know what I said. I also know what it is. He looked at her steadily. And I know what kind of man I want to be when I'm not being careful about it. Her amber eyes searched his face. Whatever she found there made her exhale slowly. They left the garden through the broken arch on the north side, moving quietly through the sleeping lower districts, the pulse wrapped and hidden and cradled close. At one point, in the narrow space between two buildings, she stopped and turned and kissed him, sudden, deliberate, her free hand at his jaw, her body warm against his in the cool night air. It lasted exactly long enough to mean something, and when she pulled back her pupils were wide in the dim light and her expression was stripped of all its careful playfulness. That was real, she said quietly. I want you to know that. I know, he said. Departure, and what remains. Getting through the docking bays nearly went wrong twice. The first time, a Karath checkpoint that shouldn't have been there, staffed by two large beings in unmarked armor scanning outgoing travelers. Davin walked through alone, unhurried, his papers in order, the pulse nowhere on his person because Illy had gone ahead through the service maintenance tunnel that ran beneath the bay and came up on the other side. She was waiting for him in the shadow of a cargo loader when he cleared the checkpoint, and the look on her face when she saw him, relief collapsing into something she immediately reordered, told him something he didn't require words to understand. The second time, a scanner at the boarding ramp that registered the pulse's energy signature and triggered a secondary alert. Davin talked them through it, years of custom runs, years of talking his way past officials with jurisdiction and attitude, with a story about a faulty bioorganic shipping container and a missing certification, plausible enough and delivered with enough bored confidence that the official waved them through muttering about paperwork. Then they were aboard, and the ramp was sealed, and Davin was in the pilot's seat running pre-launch while Illy stood in the hatchway to the cockpit watching him work. You've done this before, she said. The talking. The calm. Frequently. He ran the ignition sequence. It gets easier when you stop caring whether it works. That sounds like something a very tired person says. He glanced at her. It is. She came forward and took the co-pilot's seat, not asking, just settling into it as if she'd sat there before, or as if she intended to earn the right retroactively. Davin found he didn't mind. Solen City fell away beneath them as the ship cleared the atmosphere, the violet and gold of Velaratha's cloud system sliding past the viewports, and then there was only the deep black and the scatter of stars and the ship's hum around them. Illy held the unwrapped pulse in her hands, watching its surface move in the dark of the cockpit, patterns drifting, memories encoded in something that had survived 11 generations of keepers, all those lives compressed into a disk of living material that pulsed in time with its owner's heartbeat. When we reach Casseth, she said, the archive will require a deposition statement. Provenance, origin, legal chain of custody. She traced a pattern on its surface. I've been running so long I'd stopped thinking about what came after. What does come after? Davin asked. She considered this. I go back. Someone has to keep fighting the Karath contracts in the lower districts. Someone has to be there. A pause. It's my world. He nodded. He had expected this, and had been honest with himself about what he expected. And you? She asked. I have a navigational module to retrieve, he said. And then a lot of empty space in all directions. She looked at him with those amber eyes that had found him through a market crowd and started something he hadn't consented to and couldn't now stop. The archive is 6 days away, she said. Yes. 6 days is a long time. It can be. She stood, and crossed the small cockpit, and put her hands on the armrests of his seat, leaning in close enough that the warmth of her came through the cool recycled air of the ship. Her skin shimmered silver indigo in the starlight through the viewport. I want to be very clear, she said quietly, that what I am about to do has nothing to do with any chemical signal. I want you to be absolutely certain of that. I'm certain, he said. She kissed him slowly, thoroughly, her hands moving to his face, and Davin put his arms around her and let himself be present in a way he had not allowed himself to be in a very long time, not maintaining distance, not cataloging exits, not holding some essential part of himself in reserve. Just there. Just this. Just her warmth and the stars outside and the steady pulse of the artifact on the seat behind her, keeping time. When they finally parted, she stayed close. Her forehead rested against his. 6 days, she said again, softer. 6 days, he agreed. Outside, the stars stretched in every direction, indifferent and infinite, and inside the ship 2 people who had been careful for too long chose, together, to be otherwise. The veil pulse glowed softly in the dark, patterns moving through its surface like the breath of something ancient and patient that had always known how to wait. It would reach the archive. The memories of a people would be preserved. The woman who carried them would go home and fight the fights that needed fighting. And a man who had told himself for 2 years that he wanted nothing would carry the shape of 6 days with him across whatever distance followed, the way you carry a light after the source is gone, feeling it in the dark long after you've stopped looking for it. Some things, once they begin, change the cartography of a person permanently. Davin Rail had been looking for a navigational module. He had found something that would take considerably longer to locate on any map.